Mike Radich here, and I'm now joined on the phone by veteran MMA referee Rob Hinds. Rob, how are you?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing good. Rob, I want to talk about your seminar that you got coming up. I also want to talk about some topics that have to do with referee and judging in MMA. But first, I want to have the fans, get a feel of your background. So let's start with, when you got into MMA, you were a fighter, correct?
Yes, I was an amateur and pro fighter, yes.
Mm-hmm. And why did you decide to transition from fighter to referee?
About halfway through my fighting career, I knew I would want to continue on with the sport. I thought the best way was to get into officiating. I was asked to do a couple of events to referee and guest referee, and just took it from there and decided that was going to be my exit strategy from fighting.
Now, when you became a referee, was there some sort of course or something that you had to go through, or was it just, hey, come referee, and you just showed up and you did the show?
No, that was it. Back then, there was nothing. There was no coaching.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, in 1994, there even weren't that many referees out there. There weren't that many events out there, so I kind of learned as I went along.
Now that you've been doing this for many years and you've got a lot of fights under your belt, what is the preparation like before you have a fight? When the commission says, hey, you're reffing, these fights, these are the fights that you got, here are the names of the guys. Do you start doing, prep work about, hey, this guy, he can take a lot more damage than the other guy can, and, I know this guy a little. What's the prep work you do for the fights?
Well, I normally clear my mind completely. I don't go in with any preconceived notions.
Okay.
My communication with the fighters is my biggest success. The way I talk to them in the rules meetings, whether it's a one-on-one rules meeting or a group rules meeting, sets the standard for how things go in the cage for me.
Now, here's kind of a goofy question, but I've always wondered, because a lot of times I see on TV, there's one guy on top of the other, and he's just, repeated punching him, and, he's not answering. I mean, maybe not all the shots are getting through, but he's not intelligently defending himself. Whenever you've went in and stopped the fight, have you ever got punched by a fighter?
Oh, yeah. In fact, just recently in Bellator 60, I did the Marlon Sandro fight, and I moved around to take a better look, and as she was reaching back to punch, I moved around, and then he clipped me in the chin. So,
really?
Yeah. If you do this long enough, you'll get hit.
Was that probably the worst one, or was there one worse than that?
Luckily my worst punches in the face didn't come as a referee. It came as a fighter.
Right.
So, I've stayed at a pretty safe distance over the years.
Rob, for somebody who is interested in becoming a referee or judge, how do you get hired? How does that happen?
Through the amateur ranks, there are a lot of amateur sanctioning organizations that are out there. In unregulated states, you would probably have to go directly to the promoter. And then for the professional level, obviously you would get licensed through an athletic or tribal commission.
Mm-hmm. Now, Rob, I want to touch on some stuff going on in the refereeing and judging world. First, I want to start with the scoring system. Some people are against the 10-9 system, say, we need to move away from it, and some people, they like it for whatever reason. What do you think? Do you think that we need to keep the 10-point must system, or do we need to go to, let's say the half-point system, or maybe just judging the fights, in its entirety? What do you think we need to do?
The 10-point must system is fine, Mike. It's the definitions within the judging criteria that need to be worked. A lot of the misconceptions about a scoring system is that it's only numerical points that you're talking about. The determination comes from the judge's evaluation based on a prioritized criteria. That's where the problem lies.
There's been recent talk because there's been a lot of, close decisions, and a lot of people have said, there's some fights that, had the scores been read aloud, maybe the end of the fight could have, gone a different way. Maybe a fighter would have, tried harder to get a finish, or, would have known where they are at in the fight. Do you think that in between rounds the scores should be read aloud?
Not at all, Mike, because what that does is that creates the official controlling the bout instead of the fighters controlling the bout. Whether you're a referee or a judge, if I as a referee ask them to punch more or to kick more or to throw more submissions, I'm controlling what's going on in that bout, not the fighter. So announcing the scores in between rounds and that sort of thing, that leaves the bout really in the hands of the officials guiding the fighters, which shouldn't happen. We're completely third-party, neutral, unbiased.
Now, I have a few questions on rulings of some fights, and I'll give you an example of the first one. Eye pokes. So the fight between Robbie Lawler and Scott Smith, that ended in a no contest, but a fight between Carl Amasu and Trevor Prangley, same thing happened, eye poke, accidentally. That ends in a draw. Why the difference between the ruling?
Well, some states have different rules on how they assess fouls. One of the things about fouls is you have to look as to whether it's intentional or unintentional. Mm-hmm. And then you go on a path either way. The other thing that comes into play, Mike, is the amount of the bout that has already occurred. Mm-hmm. So in a 3-round bout, if you've completed 2 of the 3 rounds and that foul happens in the 3rd round, you can go to the scorecard for a decision. Mm-hmm. However, if less than 2/3, or in a 5-round fight, if less than 3 rounds occur, you could call it a no contest. If it's an intentional foul, you could call it a disqualification. So there's a lot of little minuscule things that come into play when those ultimate decisions are made.
And now for, let's say, like a groin strike or, an illegal strike, knee or a kick to the head of a grounded opponent, is it the same criteria for that as well?
The injury procedure is the same. The only difference is for a groin foul, the fighter is allowed up to 5 minutes at their call to determine when they're ready to go. The reason for that is obviously there's no way for us or the doctor or anything to check out a groin foul. Whereas an eye poke or, a thumb to the throat or something like that, we can actually have the doctor come in and assess if it's a concussive blow, if it's cut the eye, that type of thing. That's the reason that for a groin foul, the 5 minutes is put into play. For all other fouls, it's a reasonable amount of time and evaluation by the referee and the doctor.
Now, how would you assess an intentional strike? Because, for example, Thiago Santos, when he fought Eric Prindle, I guess it could be defined as, unintentional because it was, a groin strike because I guess he was trying to kick the back of the leg of Prindle. But then another fight, Whisper Goodman, when he fought Jonas Bilstein, that ended in a DQ when it kind of seemed like, Bilstein, it just happened. He thought that he was going to come up and then he kicked him in the head. How do you assess intentional or unintentional?
That's a tough thing for a referee to do, Mike. Here's an easy way to determine intentional versus unintentional. It's not the only way, but it's the easiest way to explain it. Basically, with an intentional foul, if I see a target, if I see an illegal target, I target it, and I hit that illegal target, that has intention to it. We'll use strikes to the back of the head for an example. If I go to punch my opponent in the face, and they turn their head at the time that I'm punching, and I happen to clip them in the back of the head, that would be something that would be considered unintentional. However, if I have my opponent's back, I push their head into the mat, I reach up, and I directly punch them directly to the back of the head on purpose, that would be intentional.
There was a fight, Czech Congo versus Paul Buentello, and Czech Congo had him pressed up against the cage, and Buentello knew that a knee was coming, and right as the knee was being thrown, he put his hand on the ground, and Herb Dean said, "Hey, I'm not going to call that an illegal strike because you were playing the game." Is that just a judgment call? Seeing somebody who's trying to use the rules to try to get an advantage?
I use that particular fight directly in my trainings as a great example. There were several fouls and an injury that happened during that fight that are very good training tools. Your question about playing the game is just that. If you know that a fighter is kind of going back and forth and playing, they're almost at their own risk. Mm-hmm. That's where you determine, did the attacking fighter purposely attack when their hand was on the ground, or was it in transition when their hand was going down to the ground? Mm-hmm. needs to make. At that time, Herb determined that, when Tello was actually going back and forth with his hand, and Congo just happened to throw the strike when he felt it was legal.
Mm-hmm. Now, elbows. Boss Rutten has gone on saying when you lose by a cut from elbow, it's not really a win. People have said that. The question I have for you is, do you think that we need to get rid of elbows, or should we leave them in?
Elbows are an interesting thing. Because they're in the rules now, you use that to your advantage.
Mm-hmm.
If you can cut somebody over the eye with an elbow and possibly end the fight with blood running in the eyes, that's within the rules, and that's allowed.
Mm-hmm.
The question about, should they be taken out? I like elbows because it is mixed martial arts.
Mm-hmm.
The more techniques you remove from mixed martial arts, it makes it a grappling match or a kickboxing match or something of that sort. Mixed martial arts was put together to allow the most effective and safe techniques in order to finish a fight. So elbows, that's everybody's own opinion. Having them in play is fine. Not having them in play is fine. Whatever that specific rule is, the fighters will always fight, to their advantage within those rules.
Do you think the unified rules should include kicks, stomps, knees to the head of a ground opponent?
Personally, I don't mind those techniques. Again, that's all part of mixed martial arts.
Mm-hmm.
When those types of things are allowed, there's also defense that's allowed for those techniques. So it's not that it's a one-sided street to where if we allowed knees to the head of a grounded opponent, that it would be more dangerous. You just have to figure out how to defend that particular technique. I happen to be an advocate. I like the Pride-style rules and some of the Valley Tudo type rules, but I also understand for them removing certain types of.
Now, there's been some people who said we'd probably get some more action if we did 3-minute rounds, have 3 3-minute rounds or 5 3-minute rounds for title fights. Do you think we should keep the rounds the way they are or possibly shorten them?
Well, I'll put it to you this way, Mike. You can have a boring 1-minute fight and you could have a boring 5-minute
mm-hmm.
fight or a 5-minute round.
Mm-hmm.
The length of the round really doesn't make a difference. It's the strategy and the action of the fighters. That's why sometimes as referees, it's evolved over the years to where when I first started refereeing, we would let the guys lay on the ground forever and do absolutely nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's a certain point within a referee's time clock in their mind, and within the rules there's a timidity rule for avoiding contact, to where we have to warn the fighters at a certain point that they need to continue action. But ultimately, that has nothing to do with the time limit. That just happens to be part of the fighter's strategy.
Now, I've heard this thrown around a lot. Should the referee be involved in the judging of a fight?
Absolutely not. It's two different things.
Mm-hmm. And now, there's been some fights recently that there hasn't been a clear tap or there's been, a verbal submission, something like that. When you're in back, when you're telling guys, at a rules meeting before the event, what are you telling them when, hey, you're caught in a submission? What are you telling them to do when it's not their night and it's gonna be over soon?
Well, if they're going to be submitted, we just ask them to make a definitive tap.
Mm-hmm.
If they pitter-pat, then they're at our mercy on whether we're going to stop that fight or not. If they make a definitive tap, then we know for sure that they're ending the fight on their own accord. Now as far as people being okay in submission, if they want to give us a thumbs up, or if they want to, wink at us, smile at us, whatever it is to let us know that they're still okay in that situation, they're allowed to do that.
Now, what are some things what you're checking? Because a lot of times people see, the referee, he grabbed his hand to see if he was still in there. A lot of people that are newer to the sport, haven't really watched that much, see that and they're like, how did he know, what to do? How did he know when to stop it? What are you looking for in that situation?
Well, when you're familiar with submissions and how they work and what parts of the body they affect, especially when you're looking at chokes and strangulations, you look for things in the eyes. You look for things in the breathing pattern. You look for things in their body flexion, their motion. Some people go stiff when they go to sleep. Some people completely go limp when they go to sleep. So there's a lot of little cues that that give you an honest read. And, you know, the more experience you get as a referee, the more you can widen your vision and look at those things. When you're a beginning referee, you look at the submission, how tight it is, and whether they're, you know, either choking to death or their arms breaking or whatever. When you become more advanced, you get to widen your vision and look for a lot more visual and physical cues.
Now, the last thing I wanted to touch on is instant replay. Some people say maybe that would help. One fight in particular that I think that if we had instant replay, it would have helped was Billy Evangelista versus Mike Ina, where the referee had stopped him because he thought that Evangelista had kneed Ina in the head when it was clearly in the shoulder. Do you think that maybe we should get instant replay in MMA?
You know, instant replay is a good tool. However, we haven't developed consistent rules in every state athletic commission yet. That needs to come first. You know, if you're the NFL and you implement instant replay and it's the same in every state for every game every time, then it's a good viable tool to use. If you're going to use instant replay only in the UFC or only in Nevada or only in New Jersey, then it's not a viable thing to use. It needs to be fair across the board. Either everybody needs to use it and implement it or not.
Now, Rob, I want to talk about your seminar. It's an ABC-approved seminar. It's going to be August 4th and August 5th. It's going to be with Sean Wheelock, who you've teamed up with. How did this seminar all come together?
Well, we're looking forward to it. So far, we have quite a few people from quite a few states signed up. It's going to be a great event. Sean and I have been talking about this for quite some time. He's not only a commentator for Bellator, but he's an advocate of the sport. A lot of people don't know that he's actually a pro boxing referee. So he feels as a commentator, he needs to educate himself more. When we came together for this partnership, it was basically, you know, we want to educate as many people on the correct information as possible. So with his marketing background and his celebrity through Bellator and that sort of thing, and myself being an ABC-approved trainer, we're going to try to touch as many people as we can in as many places as we can by doing these together. We actually plan on doing this internationally very soon.
You don't have to go too in-depth, but if you could give us a little bit of a rundown of what you'll be covering.
For referees, we go over the unified rules. We go over, most importantly, proper procedures for mouthpieces, for groin strikes, for injuries, those types of things, how to handle any ethics in media situations. We go over the positioning and mechanics of referees. There's a technical part of the training to where we go over different moves and positioning. And then, of course, at the end of each day, there's an exam. For the judges' training, we go through the judging criteria, the scoring system, how to properly assess a round, the differences between 10-10, 10-9, 10-8, all those types of things. And we go through all the details of everything that an official, regardless of their experience, needs.
Now, if someone completes this course, are they good to go? Can they start to try to get a license and start reffing or judging?
No, Mike. You know, you don't take one course in college and become
right. Mm-hmm.
This is the best starting point, or this is the best restarting point that an official could have.
Mm-hmm.
This is all the current information that you need to move forward. There is a progression to where you can shadow experienced officials, shadow people at amateur events, work amateur events, and work your way up to the pros.
Mm-hmm.
I can't be an NFL referee and ask to do the Super Bowl my first week on the job.
Right. Now, you said you plan on taking this internationally. Do you have any other seminars coming up? You know, maybe not with Sean, but maybe, you know, just by yourself coming up?
There's a couple in the works right now. We're looking at, like, Aruba. We're looking at India, and there are a couple other places. There's no dates or venues solidified right now. However, anybody could continue to look on my website and find any current dates that come up.
Now, for you, refereeing-wise, any events coming up soon?
For me, I'm doing the Hoosier Fight Club in Valparaiso, Indiana on August 18th. They always do an incredible fight card, some amazing pro matchups, and some very good amateur fights. That's my next one, August 18th.
Rob, real quick before I let you go, if you want to throw out maybe a Twitter, a Facebook, a website, anything you want to plug, go ahead.
I appreciate that, Mike.
Yeah.
My website is www.combatconsulting.net. My Twitter page is @Hinds MMA Referee, and my Facebook is Combat Consulting Robert Hinds. I'd love to hear from anybody that has any questions in regards to MMA.
Rob, thank you for doing the interview, first and foremost, but second, thanks for being a subscriber to my YouTube channel, so I really appreciate that.
Mike, it's always a pleasure talking to you. I really appreciate the time.